Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the things we know. So, this is a fun topic this week. I
Yeah,
I love rituals.
me too.
So we wanted to talk about rituals in our daily lives, the ones we use as coaches. Um, I think the part about it being in our daily lives, like I don't know that people think of things as being rituals in their daily lives, but I think we can show people that I also, as soon as I said rituals, there was something that came up for me that was like, ooh, are people going to think this is witchy?
No, because that's the whole point. And I love when you brought this up as a topic and
Yeah.
witchy. That's so funny.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I was just actually talking to my role for today about woo and witchy stuff. And like it's interesting because one definition of ritual is actions or behaviors performed regularly with intention and
Mm,
purpose, often marking significant events or transitions, often, but not always. Sometimes like people have a daily ritual with
hmm.
themselves that helps them live intentionally, that really ends up helping them let go of some stress and anxiety that allows them to kind of tackle their day. I was
Yeah.
about to say slay their day. Like what is getting into my brain? Um,
Too much
anyway,
Instagram, too
I
much
know too much
TikTok.
Instagram. But truly, I think you and I love it because that's something we get to do. We get to help people connect with themselves by bringing in easy, accessible ritual into how they start their day or end their day, or kind of, connect to their goals once a month or, however it
Hmm.
works with them. I think that's one thing, you and I and a lot of coaches are good at is like, let's figure out what's going to work for you. For
Yeah.
some people, journaling is a ritual. For some people, it is hell and it's a chore and they don't do it. So I think it's just something that's performed with intention and it's regular and it has
Mm,
purpose.
interesting. So could there be a ritual? Because you were saying beginning of the day, end of the day, but I even think about those moments in the middle of the day where you need to
Mhm.
reconnect. Like,
Yeah,
so you may not do it every day, but you might have a ritual that is the thing that brings you back to groundedness
I love that.
whenever you need it. If you're stressed out or you're feeling
Right.
lost or whatever it might be.
So I love that because like Griffin has that, and we all do, right? If
Yeah.
if you have like a breathing thing that you know to do when you start to feel stressed or you feel kind of stretched or like you've left your body and you're kind of all over the place, to breathe and bring yourself back to yourself. Whether
Yeah.
it's like 5-5-7 breathing or whatever it
Hmm.
is. That you're right. I didn't think about that. Some people think about it as an exercise or a tool. It is both those things, but it can be a ritual that
Hmm.
really helps you kind of
I
reconnect.
think about it from a standpoint of like, to me, that's one of those things that I call a line in the sand. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, your life is all of a sudden it's going 12 sides to Wednesday, and you're like, okay, how do I bring myself back to groundedness? And like you said, it might be the 5-5-7 breath or I immediately I went to, and I don't even do this because I don't have any grass around me, but people who go out and physically ground without shoes on in
Yeah.
grass or whatever, I don't have the luxury of that. But those types of things that it is a ritual that you do, but it doesn't happen ritually. You don't do it
Mm-hmm.
every day. You just know it's the thing that brings you back to
Right.
yourself.
Right. I had this discussion once with Griffin. He was like, "Do we have any ritual?" And he said, "Is grace a ritual?" I said, "Yeah, like
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
acknowledging that, like all of the energy that went into like the meal that's in front of you, like all the like how beautiful that is and how connected we
Hmm.
all are, and like that if you're eating something from the earth, so there's ritual in acknowledging, there's ritual in taking a
Mm.
minute and thinking about with purpose, like how you're nurturing yourself and frankly." I like how it slows them down, but like
Yeah.
that's my manipulation with it. Like slow down and think about what you're eating. But truly, something that you stop and really, connect to the meaning of. Like you said, it can be a daily ritual. It can be a ritual as needed. Yeah.
Could
I was
be,
when I
I mean, I think to me, the first ritual that comes to mind is birthdays.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
however you might celebrate. Like when I was little, my mom, I don't know if you guys had this, it feels so 70s. The candle that had you burnt were theoretically burned down each year. Did you ever have one of those? Oh my
No, I don't
God.
tell me about that.
So
That's
it's
so
this
neat.
huge candle And in theory, I think the theory of it was because it would have from like probably 1 to 21. So I guess the theory was you burn the candle on your birthday so it burns down the year. But it's one of those very 70s candles that's all waxy and it looks like a birthday cake. And so both my sister and I had one. And my mom would burn it every year, but I still don't think we got past like two, even though she burned it every year because she'd only burn it like when people were over on our birthdays, which was like for an hour, which wouldn't make it. So I don't know why. That's literally the first thing. But now we have anybody that follows me on Facebook. Our ritual is cake toppers.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And
I,
it's interesting. I'm so glad you said this because were you about to say something?
oh
Sorry.
no, I was going to explain the cake toppers, but go ahead.
Do
Well, I was just
explain it.
yeah. So again, if you don't follow me, and I'm private on Facebook, so you'd have to friend me. But I don't even know. We've been doing this for years, but we'd always just like get a cake on the birthday. And I think I started it with Darren, and I feel like his first cake topper was like David Bowie. And so instead of decorating a cake, I just think about what are we always talking about? What is something important to whoever it is? Liam, Charlotte, we've added Irina, and then Charlotte now does it for me and Darren, obviously. And then I cut out those and usually end up making some kind of something funny about it. So my birthday just happened in July. We are watching Vanderpump Rules, and Kamala had just come out as being our presidential nominee. So Charlotte cut out a picture of Kamala Harris and Lisa Vanderpump and then added hands. So it looks like they were holding hands. That was on my.
That's so good.
But it is, it's fun. It is a fun ritual.
In preparation for this, I was like, I'm just curious. I'm going to look up what's the difference between, according to, Google, what's the difference between tradition and ritual? And I feel like that's both, right? Like that's your tradition. But, so this is how it's defined. And I feel like, this is always open to interpretation. Rituals can be prescribed by the traditions of a community, including a religious community, but doesn't have to be. They're characterized by traditionalism, invariance, rule governance, sacred symbolism. That's interesting. I don't know about that. Rituals can include gestures, words, actions, and revered objects. Some rituals, like marriages, may be considered a specific kind of ritual known as a rite of passage. Traditions can provide families with a sense of identity and belonging. They can inspire positive feelings and memories that family members can share. A common tradition is decorating for the holidays. What I like about this is, tradition is like the passing down of things, and a ritual is like the way we do it each time.
Yeah.
Right?
So they're both,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Because I can imagine if I end up having grandchildren that this will be something, at least once the kids get older and have something they love, that Liam and or Charlotte will do for their kids. And so there's the passing down of the ritual that becomes tradition. Yeah. No, that's
like
really,
that.
really interesting. So let's talk a little bit about ritual from a historical context, right? So Egyptians, Romans, rituals were integral to daily life and the religious practices. And I mean, really any kind of, I think, community has those things. We've already talked about it being there. Obviously, both growing up Catholic, we were immersed in ritual in mass. And I think and when you said the thing about intentional, I think that's the funny thing about mass is it becomes, I think there are people who are very intentional at mass, but for most of us, myself included, so I will speak for myself, all the ups and the downs and the prayers and the dads and this and that, like I just memorized them. I just knew them, but was it intentional? Not really.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have a slightly different experience with it, partly because I grew up in I grew up with the kind of Catholics that were really genuine Catholics, like my grandparents and my parents. I wouldn't say that, but like really thoughtful. Like my dad went to daily mass when he was in town, and they there was a lot of like intentionality around and explaining that to us, which I appreciated because some of it really meant a lot to me. And despite the fact that I have a lot of issues with the patriarchy and all that stuff embedded in these religions, especially, well, not just especially, but also including in Catholicism, and the idea behind confession at first was like, why do we have to go always tell them to a man or someone who's never been in in a marriage or something like that? But in the root of it, in the ritual of it, it is about like a like a self-examination, right, of your conscience and just discernment about how you want to be living. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So if you know it, you're right. But you're right. Many, many times we're just like, blah, blah, blah. I mean, these words come out of our mouths and we're not thinking about them. So you're right. There's tradition, and then there's the ritual of like really understanding the meaning and what's happening here. Because it is bizarre if you didn't grow up with it to come and be like, so you're eating body? I mean, what the hell? But like the whole symbolism of like this sacrifice and all that. Like there's ways I can appreciate the symbolism because I learned it, and
Right.
other parts of it where I'm like, this is so weird for someone who didn't grow up with this. It's so funny.
Totally. I'll never forget my stepdad. We were at someone's funeral mass, and my stepdad was not Catholic, and he accidentally took communion. My mom was horrified. She wasn't even taking communion because talking about the patriarchy, she decided that because she was divorced, even before she got remarried, because she was divorced, she no longer deserved, I guess, to take communion. Oh, it
Yeah,
made me
that kind of stuff.
furious. Yeah,
Uh,
that's a whole nother pod.
yes. It's interesting thinking about this is, like obviously rituals and religions, like,
Mm,
they're going to mark really, and there is some like the sacraments in the Catholic
yes.
Church, like those are
Yep.
rituals, and they're pretty big deal. Some of them like you participate in before you have a conscience, like
Yeah.
baptism and even sometimes first communion, but some of them are really intentional about like really understanding. In marriage, if you get married in the church, but in a lot of religions, marriage, funerals, like all that
Yep.
stuff. And it's interesting in Western culture, like how I've noticed this, like, and this is, just bear with me for a second. I have a lot of family, like a lot, big, huge Catholic family on both sides, Brennan's too. And I noticed on the East Coast, if you go to a funeral, it is very like there's the ritual, but there's no like, I don't know what to say, what it's lacking. Like it's got all the things, it's got like the
Is
homily,
there any
this.
lacking celebration or joy?
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe there's
Yeah.
lacking the warmth is what I want to
Yes.
say, but that
Yep.
seems mean because I love these people and whatever. But on the West Coast, I grew up, and especially with my warm mother, who you sort of met, but you've met her in person, yeah? No,
No.
oh,
Mm-mm.
I can't believe
Just
you
over
haven't. She
Zoom.
talks about you like like she knows you so well. Um, so warm, and so
Yeah.
she like she created this whole family group thing with all these families to our church, and she just brought a lot of meaning to everything. So every
Mm.
funeral that she was part of, there were children bringing objects that belonged to that person up to the altar and setting them down, and there was like multiple parts to a eulogy, and there was like extra things, like everyone had a leaf representing something, or she
Oh, that's
just brought
cool.
so much like meaning to the ritual, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm used to that. I'm used to a lot of that. However, I think that like, oh, I like the way we do that. It's more of a celebration of life. And there's and I say East Coast, West Coast, because it isn't just my mom. I've seen that a lot more on the West Coast. And we probably look really touchy-feely to all my East Coast relatives who are lovely people. They're just used
Sure.
to kind of like get in, get out, and then we'll go, drink beer at the wake or
Right.
at
Right.
the reception afterwards.
Like good
And then we'll go
Irishman.
tell stories there. Right.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
When my father passed away, and my parents fostered my sister, who's Vietnamese, and she married into a very big traditional Vietnamese family, and they all drove down from Oxnard in LA in droves. Like they requested to come see him, and we weren't planning on an open casket or anything. My dad was totally against that tradition, and he hated it with his parents, and so he was
Mm.
against it.
Yeah.
And but because Soy and her family she married into really wanted that, my mom was like, okay, now we need to bring a suit over, and let's like go to the funeral home for that. We were gonna have a rosary, right? Sorry
Mm.
for everyone who's not Catholic. There's a lot of steps to the ritual of funerals, but anyway, we went over there and got him the suit, and my mom and I decided to go at the same time so we could see Soy and his family. And my aunt came with me, and we were meeting with the funeral director about just all the plans for the actual funeral. And we heard all this chanting, and we walked in, and it was the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It was absolutely
Mm.
beautiful, crying, a lot of crying, but like adornments, flowers, and like uh some other things that were wrapped up. I can't remember what they were, but like probably offerings or something, but like all this like ritual of just praise and gratitude for him being Soy's dad. And like,
Mm.
it was absolutely stunning. And my aunt and I were kind of standing in the back, blown away. And my mom came in and we were like, God, Eastern religions really have this right. Like they
Ugh,
really
yeah.
create something so beautiful and accessible and comforting where, like we still have some, even the things we've done that I was telling you about, we still have some just like, oh, this is so sad and so sad. And it just made this really warm connection that happened that made my mom go, he looks so peaceful and good. I kind of want to leave it open for the
Mm.
rosary. And it was really neat for his grandchildren to see him and just to see him so peaceful. And so like you bringing this up makes me think like, oh, it's so interesting when they come together and like take a tradition or a ritual and then make it even warmer when you kind of cross cultures
Yeah.
was really, really neat.
I love that. And again, part of all the rituals, and yes, there's a lot in Catholicism. I'm sure there are many in other religions as well, but it's meant to be the connection to the divine, right? Like I love
Mhm.
you saying like it was appreciation for him being her dad, and as I was picturing it as you were talking about it, like I can see it in my head, and it does feel very like lifting him up, um and if we just go through the motions of anything, you lose that connection to the divine. And again, I'm only speaking for myself in church.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was me. I was very grateful, for my dad. He had donated his body to the Wright State Medical School, and so we always knew we were just having a celebration of life, and that was so great. We made my uncle, his brother, made poster boards with pictures of him over from literally like when he was a baby until he got older. Amy and I could bring in things like you said, like his favorite movie was A Christmas Story. So we had stuff from there. We had A Christmas Story
That's
playing on the
right.
TV, and we brought in Marion's Pizza for shout out to Dayton. And it was very warm, and of course, it was a couple of months past his death. So, other than Liam getting up and doing a speech and putting everybody into tears, it was a celebration. There was no real sadness, and I really love that about celebrations of life versus a funeral.
Yeah, there's some really neat opportunities there. Been around. I've been around a while. I've participated in many really, really beautiful, beautiful celebrations of life that were wonderful rituals. And as we're talking about this, I just keep thinking like, we have in our notes here, religions use rituals to create a sense of community. So true. And connection to
Yeah.
the divine. I love that, like you just said. And what I realize is it brings you into the present, right? So you could
Yes.
have traditions like going to mass, but unless you like, have a moment where you're really feeling like your presence here and what this means that I'm saying, it doesn't need to be mass, like it could be anything. You could be part of like someone's birth and you might be just thinking about helping them get through it, or you could really acknowledge the powerful thing that's happening here, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with like we had Beth here and talk about like the
Yeah.
beautiful ritual of being bedside when someone's leaving and transitioning, and how that can be so sad, and it can be so clinical or it can be so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think rituals are like an invitation to be really present and
Love
really
that.
connected.
Yeah. Make a note of that invitation to be present and connected.
Yeah.
Love
And I
it.
think like when I was visiting my aunt in New Mexico, the Buddhist, she was a Catholic nun once, and she's a Zen Buddhist. She practices daily, and they have a meditation silo. And I realized, it's the ritual, the habit, the intention that like provide, like the spine, the backbone to
Yeah.
her everyday life. Like it's that ritual of I sit in meditation, therefore I live a certain way. It's pretty neat.
So, what are some of your rituals when we're talking about daily?
So I got a lot of habits. We've talked about that previously about my like
I knew as soon
addiction
as
to
I asked, I was like,
crosswords.
"Oh, this is a loaded
My
question."
addiction to crosswords. I'm so proud of myself. I didn't do that today. Like no, my when I'm really on my game and feeling connected, and I'm conscientious of the daily ritual I want to have, which is is quite like be up early. I love like my ritual with the sun, even if it's not out, although we've had a lot of sun this summer, is to like just have a ritual of like starting a day really quietly with myself and the sun. So it involves some form of getting outside, even if it's brief, and some sort of like movement or yoga. And then you know, I definitely connect to the ritual, the tool of morning pages, of just
Mm,
seriously brain dumping so that I can clear
mm,
clear all the clutter, so I can get really clear on what's important for me in my day. And then after I do those like few things, then I can sit in meditation. And I fully admit sometimes like I just let my mind wander, and sometimes I can fall asleep or I can get like really blank. But other times, sometimes I'm just in this beautiful place of clarity, and I don't
mm.
force it.
Nice. Do you listen to guided meditations?
I used to. Right now, I'm really just trying to focus on
Mm,
like sitting in silence with like a word or two.
nice.
But when that starts to like go, "Wah," then I get guided meditations, and it just sort of helps. It's like the
Yes.
guided meditations for me are like the railings, you know, like I
Yeah,
was just thinking
yeah,
about the bowling alley,
yeah.
like the, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And would you say more often than not you're able to get that in or no?
Because you and I recently identified that I was like, oh, my morning, because I don't sleep great. And if I have a morning where that just doesn't happen, I'm not beating myself up. But yes,
Good.
because I've been really intentional this summer,
Nice.
I'm getting that in.
Nice. Yeah.
There's not a lot I have a lot of control over in the way things can sometimes go in my day with, like, you know, if Griffin has a seizure, poor guy, you know, and so he and I both are trying to have a little more rituals when we can, so that we can at least be intentional about parts of our day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because we've mentioned several times my routine of getting up and working out. But I think I do identify that as somewhat ritualistic because it is the way I ground myself. I am not someone who meditates. I don't really journal, although I do write out my affirmations. So that's as close as I get to journaling, unless I literally my brain is killing me, and then I will definitely brain dump. Um, so my other sort of, again, it's funny. I don't think I've identified it as a ritual because I don't know, but my writing and my affirmations. I mean, that sort of thing is part of it, but it doesn't always happen at the same time. I like if I had my perfect morning, and I actually had it today, and it really started with my hip replacement because I was stuck in bed. Is I wake up, and I think part of it is I don't have to rush out the door to get Charlotte to work or to school, but waking up, doing my Duolingo, which we'll talk about learning something new in the next pod or last pod. But then we also then reading my wealthy spirit, writing out my affirmations. I pull my card from Gabby Bernstein, and I usually look at my moon omens affirmation for the day. If I can do all that before I get up and put on my workout clothes, that is actually gorgeous and beautiful. A lot of times it happens the other way around. It just sort of depends on when my day starts with coaching. But I love being now. It's been something I've been doing for the last couple months where I get up and I get back into bed and I do all those things before I even get up. And it does feel and that's when it feels intentional. And I think maybe that's why I love it, if I could do it first thing in the morning, because if I'm waiting until after we record the pod or whatever it might be, then I'm like, okay, I just got to get it in, so
Yeah.
it's more of a task than ritual.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I think that's a beautiful point, is when it's intentional and it helps you connect to your big picture, but also have focus. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where it becomes like, if it's a daily ritual, it's something that like feels sacred.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we could easily, you and I both can easily go like a whole week and get away from that. And then like,
Totally.
oh, come back to it. And it makes so much sense, obviously, that
Well, and I
you don't
mean,
skip it.
I'm sure you've had this experience with your clients as well, but I mean, I have definitely had clients where they see such a dramatic difference between doing something for themselves ritualistically in the morning before everybody else gets up, and their day goes so much better than getting up and going right into helping everybody else in their house. And it's always the difference between they could have the same day But if they've taken care of themselves first, it goes so much more smooth, even with the ups and downs. But if they've gotten up and jumped right into the day, then the ups and downs affect them. Because again, they haven't ritualistically taken care of themselves.
Right. Right. Oh, totally. That's a really good point. Um, I like this because, I mean, going into this, I was thinking about, we do rituals at our retreats, and like
Yeah.
there's exercises we can do, there's really cool tools, there's experiences we want people to have, there's workshops. I think you and I are really well versed in all of that, but the ritual piece is so important, and it starts before they get there.
Yep.
And then there's definitely, like, in any sort of coaching relationship, or like, there's always going to be, hopefully, some sort of ritual of what do you need to let go of to step into more of what you want. And when you can ritualize it, it feels really meaningful, and a
Yeah.
shift happens internally when you can really feel yourself committing to something, or being really conscientious, or visualizing. Like, a visual piece of ritual is super important to me, not just for me, but for people I'm working with. Is like, can you see that? Can you see that
Yeah.
float away from you? Can you see yourself letting go of it? Can you see yourself stepping into it? And it's so it's there's so much more success at this when you stop and you're really present, and you feel like the celebration, you feel different after you go
Yeah.
through it. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I came in here thinking about. But as the more and more we talk about it, it's so beautiful to, like a really intentional life is strung together by these daily rituals.
Yeah. Although, yes, I think we have hosted, we have been at so many retreats that started with a ritual, ended with a ritual, and it is sort of the opening and closing of the container of that experience. It takes me back to our one in Laguna where, we had an idea for the opening ritual, and then we ended up a little bit co-creating it with the people in the room too,
Yeah,
which was
true.
neat, right? Like
Right.
we had you talk about it, because I felt like you kind of co-created it, especially the part where you ended up tossing things into the ocean or burning things. I can't
Right.
remember.
Well, I think we were up on a beautiful balcony overlooking the ocean, and it was really clear some people maybe didn't want to go to the sand, so we split.
Yeah.
We took some people out to the water, and some people, and both were beautiful, because
Yeah.
there was a so what we did was to symbolize, like, what people were letting go of. We got a bunch of beautiful rose petals,
Yep.
and we lit candles and talked about, like, our intentions, but also what we were letting go of, what we were done with, so that we could step more into this next beautiful chapter. And I was our intention, but also, somebody, I think it was Elijah, suggested, can we share what they are, as we do it.
Yeah.
And it was our intention to invite people to do that if they felt like they wanted to. And they really did. They really wanted to, share, like, I'm letting go of, worrying about what people think, or I'm letting go of saying yes when I'm a big no. I'm letting go of, all the ways I abandoned myself, or, I'm letting go of hating my body. Like, there's just some beautiful,
Hmm.
those are some examples that I'm not, but it was absolutely beautiful and meaningful. It's one thing to say that and sit in an audience at a beautiful lecture and write that down. It's
Yeah.
one thing to say that on your own, but when you're being witnessed, and
Everything.
there's like a physical action, and you get to see those beautiful petals get taken by the ocean or the wind, and really feel yourself letting go, there's something, like, that powerful and energetic that shifts. And so the more we can get people, like, physically involved in the, like, actual, not just visualizing, but experiencing the letting go, the more that ritual takes hold. And that really ended up, like, being that thing that freed people, and suddenly they had
Yeah.
all this energy to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And then closing that container. Like, I don't think we haven't really talked. I don't think we know yet how we're going to open it in October, but we already have a sense of what we want to do at the
Mhm.
end. Because that too, it's like, okay, this experience is over. You've gotten so much. They haven't really totally been able to integrate yet. And yet, what are you stepping into now as you leave this experience, this retreat or whatever? And
Yeah.
that because then it becomes an anchor.
Right, right. Rituals and anchors, right? That's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. Like, then it becomes something you can go back to because the ritual sparked it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think the symbolism of candles and
Yeah.
water are really, really helpful. We were going to do a version of a mikvah, which is a beautiful Jewish ritual that's often done on the eve or the morning of a wedding, in Jewish culture, which is a cleansing, right? And
Hmm.
that is a really we couldn't because the riptides really fully do that, and we ended up making that a little optional, and that was fun. But like that is a beautiful thing to really just be conscientious of what you want to really be done with, and like feel like it gets like removed from you in the water and you come out
Mm.
cleansed. And I feel like we accomplished that with the letting go and the flower petals without making
Yeah.
everybody dunk in a riptide.
Which for the best, for the best.
But I have participated in one of those in my friend's wedding, and it was powerful. It
Oh,
was
I bet.
incredible. And I really did come out of there going, okay, I'm done with that. I'm done with, you know, I think my thing was, and I don't think he'd mind me sharing, was like, I'm done being like so frustrated and hard on Brendan for his, his work schedule taking over our lives. Like,
Mm.
like I'm done complaining about that. Like, I think I'm ready to like really work together. And it really just shifted a lot of, and he ended up, he and the boys came down and joined us for that wedding. And I just had such a good time with him because I think I was, you remember that I was just like, I was all contorted with like,
Yeah.
justifiable frustration, and as was he, and it just shifted everything. And I just focused on that. And so it's neat. Like, ritualizing it is a really helpful way to move forward. Like, people can make a ritual out of like doing their finances once a month. It could be like
Yep.
something
Money
they light a
date.
candle for. Yeah, money date. Beth and I, for a while, just to spend time together, we're doing like full moon rituals together to like kind
Nice.
of just, kind of get together as two females and really talk about like what's big for us, what's growing, and what we're looking forward to in the next month. We could have done new moon. That would have been probably even more appropriate for what we were doing, but that's just how we loved being in the full moon together,
Yeah.
and like supercharging and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think there's ways you can just go deeper with somebody or with yourself by making it a ritual that makes it kind of fun. And my sister always was always really good at like make it meaningful. Like, she always has this, she always makes things like, it's really important to her that things have meaning. And I don't even know, like, I'm gonna bring that up to her. Like, I think she probably does know that, but like how much she's ritualized some things for our family because she stops and makes everybody be really conscientious of even the little things that they would have just kind of gone through. And
I
we
love
probably
that.
got that from my mom.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like it. That's awesome. So are there things that you use with your clients?
I do. I do. I feel like I mean, some of them are things we've learned in NLP and like TCM, but to create an opportunity to like I do it actually when they're in a really good place and they don't feel like they have anything I almost, I'm feeling really good. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite kind of, so like we turn it into a ritual of like, where you're standing, what point of view you're at right now. And so we talked about reframing recently, but like it's a really beautiful way to see where you're at right now and how far you've come and how to celebrate that. And so I'll do like a guided meditation, like with a script I've developed over time around like kind of looking at it from all directions. It's pretty
Mm.
neat. And it ends up being just a really great way to ground into the present and the progress and what's to come.
Nice.
I do.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, I think ritualistically for me, it's definitely celebrating at the beginning and having a takeaway at the end, and
Yeah.
sometimes clients take away or they take it as being they're reflecting back to me what they're supposed to do, like with their action items. And I'm like, well, if that's how you look at a takeaway, then so be it. But for me, it's more of like, first off, celebration, hands down. I mean, very rarely do I forget that. And it just kind of depends. If I do forget it, it's because the clients come in kind of hot or whatever and has right away talking. But I feel like celebration at the beginning is so important because it sets the container for the next hour from a place of strength versus lack,
Right. Yeah.
So celebration's incredibly important. And then the bookend of a takeaway as well, or an aha, whatever it is, or I really love what I ask them to do, an appreciation of themselves,
Yeah.
so it sort of bookends. I think that's
I love
probably the
that.
classic,
I love that.
yeah, the rituals I do for sure.
And also just how will you celebrate, like, sending them off with like something that they're going to do to, yeah, I love that. And I love when they like come back and say, I did do that, that felt really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody, but probably women on some level more than others, just live in a world of checklists and okay, that's done, so let's move on. Even when it's something they've accomplished, it's sort of thank you next, And so for me, it's really important to make sure that my clients are integrating what they have accomplished and not just blowing it off. Because once you celebrate, it becomes a memory, versus just something that happened. And so that's to me what's really important about the celebration aspect of that.
Yeah, I love that. I also just want to like go back to just not forget to mention that there's like a lot of research out there about ritual, which I love, about that shows that people who engage in daily rituals report lower levels of stress and higher levels of satisfaction, which makes sense to you and I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in your head and you're out of your body, and it's so much of the work we do is somatic, and if you don't know what that word is, it's really just, any sort of um exercise or affirmation or activity that gets you back in your body, like gets you physically like aware of how you're feeling, and like really in tune with what your body's trying to tell you, whether you're in pain or you're nervous. So when people are in their head a lot, as we all tend to be in this society and then in these times, there's a lot of anxiety, and rituals can bring you into that sense of calm and
It's about being present
presence.
again.
Right.
Yeah.
So it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Also, there's studies that show rituals can improve focus. It does for me,
Mm.
productivity and emotional well-being. So those, like, I think that that's worth considering, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, if I had a little bit more, I hate the word for ritual, but structure in the way that I acknowledge things and celebrated things, that might help me, string together a week that I feel really good about, or, more productive in. I don't know. But
But I think so, but what comes up for me when you say that is if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I don't have this, or oh, now do I have to create this? My first invitation would be step back and take a look at what you're already doing. Because I remember I had a client once who thought she wasn't doing anything. And then as we worked together, she was like, oh, wait, I'm already doing a lot of this stuff. But because she was so, thank you, next, thank you, next, thank you, she wasn't acknowledging what she was already doing to take care of herself. So I think the same is true in rituals. Before you decide to go out and create a whole new game plan for yourself, take a step back and look at what you're already doing that maybe you didn't even realize was ritualistic. Again, like I wouldn't have necessarily thought of exercise as a ritual for me until when I had a human design reading and that was pointed out that that's how I ground myself. Now it feels very ritualistic for me.
I
It
do.
feels important.
I haven't done every form of exercise, but I've done a lot. And I do. There's different things I love about different things. I like sweating. I like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
short little interval sprints. But I do think of yoga and running as beautiful
Mm,
rituals, especially
yeah,
for women, but probably for men too. I'm just
yeah.
not a man.
You are not. Anything else you want to add about
No,
rituals?
it's just making me happy. I like this. I like this topic, and it's also
Well,
inviting
we
me to.
love doing it.
I
We
know.
love doing
But
rituals.
I have to admit that I can like really, especially with like all the kids home and the things coming up, I can skip over them sometimes just to get through the weeks and have some fun, but like really slowing down and remembering to not skip those things is so appreciated by everybody, and
Mm.
ends up making a really, like, it's just, this is perfect timing because I have 1 week left with Peter home and his girlfriend's coming in, and it's like, ooh, what can I sprinkle in there that would make it kind of fun and meaningful?
Oh,
Anyway.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
you picked a good song, so do you want to share it
Yeah, this is we couldn't think of a song about ritual, which we never have to be that, like, obviously
on the nose?
rudimentary, but one of the songs I remember in the retreats I used to do, before you and I met,
Oh,
in Kauai with my friend, Samantha, was just, there was one where we played the song at the beginning and it just got everybody moving in a way
mm.
that just felt really, really good. And also we had a category 5 storm headed towards Kauai at the time. And
Oh
so
my
this
gosh.
song really kind of brought a lot of calm, because once they all landed, we were like, we're changing a few things on the itinerary because it might not be safe to be out by the water. But it's this song. It's by Nako and Medicine for the People, called Black as Night, which is an interesting, it's from the Dark as Night album, but it's beautiful. It's like, what I love about it is like, I believe in the good things coming, you know, like, and it just starts off just really, really beautiful. Go to our playlist when Lisa puts it on there and you'll see what I mean. But the words I grabbed is this verse, or these verses, is which: more pages, more words to my story, more grace, more meaning unfolding. Take a drive, Rain Park, Cascadia, feel the warmth in my cold heart radiant. Two shakes and I'm feeling weightless, heart aches, but it's actually painless. Take a vow in the pale moonlight, moonlight. Take a look at myself through my third eye. Third eye. And everything's already all right, always all right, always all right. It's this just beautiful rhythmic song with lyrics that really kind of get you into this place of believing like all the good things are still coming, which I love.
Maybe that's our opening.
Yeah, maybe.
For the retreat.
Yeah.
Look,
love it.
You're getting to learn about this real time.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we already said it. We love ritual. We know the power of it, whether it's in community, by yourself. I think you nailed it early on. It's about being present. Our life goes by so fast. I don't want to quote Ferris Bueller, but it really does. Our life goes by so fast. And somebody actually reflected back to me on Facebook the other day. I put a picture up about Charlotte and I going back to school shopping, and it was an old colleague of ours. And she said, I love how you're always so present to these moments. And I just thought that was like one of the nicest compliments I'd ever gotten.
Yeah.
And I mean, even that, like posting on Facebook, like I don't do that. I do that for me, because now Facebook has memory. Not now, it's had memories forever, but like I love looking at those memories, even the ones that are a little bit sad, and so when I'm posting these things, yes, it's for friends and family, but it's also just as much about, that's a ritual of me presencing what's happening in my life or the kid's life or whatever it might be. And I think that's it. We can go, do. And when you have a ritual, you get to be. And that's so, so important.
I love it. I just remembered that like there's one of the parts of the lyrics that I love that my kids noticed early on when they were younger was something about like, you got the keys, but I'll never keep my door locked, or something like that. And if my arms are full, you can bet your ass I'm going to drop everything, something like that, and surrender to your beauty. There's just something about that was just so beautiful. And it was such a great reminder to me, how much like we need to be reminded sometimes to like drop everything when someone's in front of you. And so you're right. What you just said reminded me of that. It's beautiful. Like
I can't wait to hear this song.
Yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of, well, I guess we weren't really speaking of more content, but I want to presence the fact that, we do have the Instagram page, the Things We Know Pod. It's really where we put the additional content up each week. Sometimes it's clips from the video or from the pod. Sometimes it's memes. Sometimes it's quotes one of us have said or one of our guests have said. But this isn't just a once a week deal. We want you to be engaged with this topic all week long. So I'm going to invite you, if you haven't already, to go over to the Things We Know Pod on Instagram and follow us there so you can see all the additional stuff that we do around each topic each week.
Excellent. Yes, Lisa does such a beautiful job curating that. And maybe by the time this airs, I'll have been doing some lives. We'll see.
TBD.
All right, TBD.
All right, everyone. As usual, thank you so much for listening. And if this resonated with you, we would love to hear what some of your rituals are. So you can always comment on any of those posts on Instagram. And we will be back next week.
Bye.